We're now talking to Wade Eyerly, who is the CEO of Plain Red. And Wade, what you have in mind here is very disruptive. Perhaps you can tell our viewers a little bit what you're developing at Plain Red.
Sure. So we're using small planes to do commuter flights around the Northeast. So we're flying from between New York, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., and Atlantic City. We're using 9-passenger Cessna 208 Grand Caravans with an Oasis interior, the executive interior, cargo pod on the bottom. But the couple real critical things is that it's an all-you-can-fly subscription, and which we thought was the biggest innovation, but by far the biggest response we've seen is the fact that our passengers won't have to go through TSA.
So this is very disruptive on all kinds of levels. So let's start off with, how do you think you're going to pull this off?
Well, I mean, what are the biggest challenges, right? Planes, places you're flying, passengers. Ultimately, every business comes down to revenue. If you can get enough people to do it, then you can find a way to succeed. I mean, there's a lot of government regulation you got to go through, and I mean, with every airline, your number one priority is always safety. But after that, for us, it's simplicity. Every airline chooses their own path, but our goal is to make everything about flying as simple as possible.
So you're going to fly from the major airports or small airports?
We can do both, actually. So even DCA here in Reagan DCA here in DC has a general aviation side to it. But one of the downsides to major airports is all major traffic flows go through there. That's both a plus and a minus. Mass transit goes through there as well. In DC, we'll probably fly out of Potomac Airfield, which is located right behind National Harbor. If you're familiar with DC, that's as close as DCA is to Capitol Hill. It's a $9, $11 cab ride or something.
There's no train there, right?
There's no train there.
But taxi's no problem.
Taxi's pretty inexpensive, and again, since there's no wait, you aren't going to lose an hour and a half at the airport or the rest of it. You're going to be able to pull up, walk up to the plane, hand your bag to the pilot who's going to put it on the plane because he's balancing the weight, and then take your seat and go. I mean, it's
15 minutes.
Absolutely.
That's like that's a fantasy right there in the Northeast. So let's say so you've got a fixed price per month subscription.
One of the things that it does a number of things for us, but the first one is it's simple. You know what it is. It's every time. Now, no one's ever done that before, and we're interested. We have no comparable data. It's a little bit of an experiment. We're trying to figure out what happens to your demand for travel when we remove those barriers to entry. It's no longer a pain in the neck, and you are no longer seeing that credit card charge every time you fly. So what does that do for your willingness to consume travel? Would you go to New York from DC more often if it was just a matter of, like a library, just logging in and saying I want to go and then getting on a plane and going, versus actually having to swipe a credit card and seeing that money go out every time? And so we'll have to...
And have you fixed your price?
So we think right now, we've been through dozens of iterations of the model. Right now we think the price will be $225
per month.
Per month.
All you can fly.
All you can fly. It's a 6-month subscription.
So in other words, if fuel prices spike, you are on risk for 6 months.
Actually, no. It's better than that because we have locked in what the demand we're meeting is. We can actually go ahead and instead of hedging future fuel prices, which is what all major airlines do, they buy 50% at today's rate, so it'll go up or down. They can manage it. Instead, we can actually just purchase executable contracts for 6 months at today's price. It's not a profit maximizing strategy because what if the price goes down? But it's a risk minimizing strategy because we can make sure that our model is profitable into the future. Right. We can predict accurately 6 months out what our demand is, and therefore we know how much fuel we'll need. We can go ahead and buy that.
And under which FAA rules would you be flying? So
we'll initially fly under a Part 135, which means we won't be able to disclose any sort of schedule. But I think ultimately our intent will be a Part 121 carrier. That just takes so much time.
Right.
The key for any small business is get out the door and start delivering your products.
So how does somebody sign up for this 225 deal? How would they do business with you?
So plainred.com is going to take credit cards, and that's the only way we're going to do it.
So you have to book through the system. It's online booking. There's no reservation system like the GDSs that you're going to use.
Right now, you're going to go to plainred.com and you're going to book. Now we're developing our own booking engine because again, we want to simplify everything.
Right.
Every airline I have ever seen, the website is cluttered. There's 100 different things. It's complicated. It's a pain in the neck. You never know if you should have bought yesterday or if it's going to be cheaper tomorrow. It's not a clean, simple experience. So for us, You're going to look either at a screen or an iPad, your computer, whatever it is, and the screen will be divided into 4 parts.
You're going to have a mobile app version too?
A mobile app, absolutely. So every subscriber will be able to hold 4 reservations at any given time. So the screen will be divided into 4 parts, and you're going to tap that part. It's going to open up if it's on a mobile. You'll click it if it's on a computer screen. But it'll open up, and it's just a map. This is our service area. And if you think of the Indiana Jones line that they draw when they travel between places, right? You're going to draw your finger between little throbbing dots at each of the cities we fly to, A to B. Tell me you want to go there. It's going to say when. You're going to put it in, we're going to kick back the available flights. You're going to get a series of horizontal bars with 9 little, like the Facebook page before you load a photo, little silhouettes in it.
Right.
And they'll gray out as they're full, and there'll be a bright, bright one that and you literally, you're going to tap on it and you're on that flight. Done. Tap off of it and you're off. If the flight's full but you want to get on a waiting list in case someone comes off, you can still tap on it, and the 10th spot is a little number, and it just tells you how deep that waiting list is and how deep you're in it.
Right.
When you look at your dashboard then, you have sort of a quick shot of the map, the route you're going in, the little date, or the number that just gives you the waiting list for the route.
So the booking process for you would be how many minutes?
Easily under a minute.
That's pretty disruptive.
You're going to open it up, you're going to go, I want to go from here to here, I want to go on this flight, boom, and you're on it. It's done. There's nothing else to do. We don't have to take your credit card. We don't have to verify who you are. Because you're a subscriber, we've already run your stuff through the no-fly list. We don't have to do that every time. We have a known community of travelers.
And you're outside of the TSA.
And we avoid TSA. Now we're avoiding TSA almost by accident, but we're sure glad we're doing it. I mean, when we set out to do this, so I have a brother who's a pilot. He's my co-founder. Graduated Embry-Riddle, no flight jobs. He was sort of complaining to me on the phone. I said, "What do we got to do to get you in the air?" He said, sort of offhand, jokingly, "Buy a plane, start an airline." And so I started thinking, well, what do we really need to do? And we looked at, I'm a process improvement guy. So I mapped the process of everything from booking a flight to getting on an airplane to getting where you're going, and then started cutting out the steps I thought were unnecessary. And one of them is sure that 20 minutes booking, it's 20 minutes if it's clean. If you know where you're going to go. If you know when you're going, if you know this is the airline you want. I mean there's so many options and so much variation that you end up less satisfied with whatever you take. That's the paradox of choice.
Now, planered.com, you've got the domain locked up.
Planered.com right now is a landing page. It lets you sign up with an email address, and we'll let you know sort of as things begin rolling out.
And the cities you want to serve?
Right now, New York, DC, Philadelphia, and Atlantic City. Now, this is our proving market. So we think this model is really disruptive, as you said. We think it's going to work. We believe, we think this is going to be great. So we're going to try this for 6 months. We're going to undertake a 6-month experiment. The hardest part about it is there is no existing data. To say, if you're starting Blockbuster or Netflix, you can look at what Blockbuster's doing and say, okay, our market is X, demand is Y. There's nothing to look at for a subscription airline like this. So it's a 6-month bet. We think our model works. Now the advantage is, because we're selling subscriptions, we can actually pre-sell those subscriptions before so we have executable contracts ready. We're sitting there with Cessna and say, we want 6 planes, send us the contract, waiting for us to sign and send back. We'll hold on to those. And then we turn it into a marketing exercise. How many signups do we get? Because we can scale to it. If we get 6,000 people, maybe we only can put 4 aircraft into the fleet.
How many people have signed up on PlaneRed so far? Can you tell me that?
Yeah, so right now we have not taken any credit cards. That's a critical step for us.
Right.
And so we're just with email signups. And we know our conversion from email to actual credit cards is going to be in the low single digits. But right now we put up the landing page and select it, and let you submit your email address. We send out about a half dozen emails and a Facebook post. That's the sum total of our marketing so far. And in 7 weeks we had more than 10,000 people sign up. It feels very much like we are selling nuts to squirrels. I mean, there's unbridled demand.
Well, I mean, if you think about traveling between DC and, let's say, New York, the shuttle is what it is. You've got Amtrak, which is what it is. You've got Megabus and Bolt Bus. Nothing really there that sort of is the speed and convenience that you're talking about.
We think we're better on speed, convenience, cost. I mean, literally each of the pain points involved in getting from A to B, we believe we've addressed.
So let's talk about the speed. What does it take right now? Let's say I'm going from Capitol Hill to Wall Street. What are the times do you think that it takes to the various options?
You can drive it in 5 hours.
Right.
You can take a megabus, get there in 5 hours. You can drive out to the airport, wait for an hour and a half, getting through security and whatnot, and then get on a plane, fly there, be there in an hour, assuming you don't sit in the pattern or get stuck on a tarmac. So all told, 2.5 hours. You can take the train, get you there in 3.5. On us, you'll be able to book your flight in a minute, drive to our airport, which likely will be closer to you. And I'll tell you about that in New York in a minute, for instance. Drive to the airport, get right on the plane that we anticipate will be coming about once every half hour all day long. Fly to New York. Now you'll fly through Philadelphia or Atlantic City on your way, which will add 15 or 20 minutes to your stop. I mean, to your time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a 35-minute flight to Philadelphia and 25 minutes from there to New York. 50 minutes in the air, 20 minutes on the ground. DC to New York, an hour and 10 minutes. Now in New York, we're going to be flying into 3 different airports, we anticipate. Teterboro, Westchester, and Long Island. Now we can fly into the bigger airports, but again...
You lose your advantage.
And one of the great things about flying into small airports is, if you live in Long Island, you don't have to drive the hour and a half into JFK. If you live out, in New Jersey, you don't have to drive the hour and a half down to JFK. We're able to service that massive city
You're actually
with
going
much
to
more convenient locations.
It's almost like bedroom airports.
Absolutely. And, we're avoiding the, millions of dollars to buy a gate at some of those, especially these eastern major airports. So, which was a heavy cost for JetBlue's launch. Now, they were doing different things than we are. Mm-hmm. One of the things to know out of the gate, we know 2 things. We will not be the right solution for everyone.
Right.
And
But you don't need everyone.
We don't. And we will not fly New York to LA. We're not going long distances, and we never will.
If you converted your 10,000, let's say, initial interest people to 50% of that,
sure,
you have a business.
Oh, absolutely. So we think, our internal numbers suggest somewhere between 1,100 and 14 passengers justify a plane.
Per month.
Per month. Now that's our best guess again, because there is no data on it. Now each plane gives us 5,400 flight legs a month. So the question is balancing that. And out of the gate, the worst thing that could happen to us is we end up oversubscribing. The demand is so high, we accept too many people. We can only get out 5 or 6 planes. We put them in the fleet, and everybody who's going to book a flight can never get one, and they hate it. That kills us. Short of a crash, which kills any airline. That's the worst thing that could happen to us, is allowing an oversubscription.
Right.
So at launch is the only time we will actually lose money, but we will intentionally bring on too few subscribers, probably by half from what we anticipate we will be able to serve, and then walk that number north month over month until we get to that place where our flights are generally full.
So let's talk about the airplane. The Caravan is a well-known airplane. FedEx flies them. They fly all over Alaska. I mean, it's a go everywhere, do anything kind of an
It's
airplane.
the Ford Taurus of aircraft. Everyone knows what it is. It's very reliable.
How's it going to handle the weather pattern in the Northeast?
So 208s are flown all over the Northeast. Now it's got de-icing built into it.
Radar.
Like everything else, it's subject to weather limitations. Now there are pluses and minuses as well with smaller aircraft. Sometimes we can fly in weather that big planes can't because we're able to take off from different airports. Sometimes we can't get up when maybe a bigger plane could push through something. I'm not a pilot, that's not my expertise. That's what I'm told.
Right.
So I'm parroting that.
Right.
But in the end, I think the level of service we're able to provide with these small planes exceeds what you'll get on a big aircraft.
Certainly could be a more comfortable seat by the sound of things.
Sure. We're putting 9 planes on an aircraft designed for 14.
9 seats.
9 seats, sorry. And
how big is the seat going to be?
So think of it as it's not a lazy boy, but it's an executive seat. It's a leather,
But certainly on an airliner would be a premium seat.
Oh, absolutely. And you're only in it for an hour. There's no destination on our whole route map further away than an hour and 10 minutes.
And there's no in-flight service, there's no bathroom.
There actually is a lavatory on the plane in an emergency. I would be mortified to have to use it. Yeah, it's a stool underneath the seat. You got a little curtain you're going to pull around. On a plane of 9 people, they're hearing what's going on. It's not a subtle thing.
Right.
I wouldn't want to use it. It's an hour to any destination, and there's a stop in the middle if you're going.
You handle it.
So yeah, you can probably. But if you got a 5-year-old and you got or whatever, I don't know.
Right.
It is there.
So tell me how long it takes before you actually put a bird in the air.
So we originally we were going to use a factoring loan to get us off the ground. We were going to pre-sell the subscriptions and use that as a purchase order against which we could get a loan to buy our aircraft and move forward. We got a heck of a time finding anyone willing to lease Cessna 208s. Every aircraft leasing company we talk to, everyone's response is a plane that small, go buy it. And so that's the approach we've got. But we also learned no one wants to factor to a startup with no corporate credit history. So now we're going to have to buy the aircraft outright. And that means raising money, something we've not done before. We're first-time founders.
So Cessna won't lease them to you?
So Cessna appears unwilling to lease them to us.
Right.
So I don't think they want to be holding the bag for 6 aircraft should our 6-month experiment not work.
Right.
So we're going to have to buy the aircraft, and that means raising money, something we haven't done before. We're told to expect 3 to 6 months to raise a round of funding to do that. It's not a huge round. I mean, $5 million is not an uncommon raise out of the gate for a lot of businesses.
Right.
Now, we feel like we're perhaps a safer investment than than maybe a tech business where all you're going to get is IP on the back end that may or may not be useful. We're at least asset backed, and sure, you now have a plane that you're, and debt you're servicing, but you could, in theory, still be able to offload that, and it doesn't depreciate at such a rate. Anyway, it's asset secured, so we feel like that's a little bit better, though probably not a great advantage. It's a $5 million experiment, and we're going to find somebody willing to.
So if you had the capital in hand now, how long would it take you to get yourself a 135 certificate?
There's 2 ways to get it. I mean, you can buy an existing airline that has a 135. You could buy a charter operation somewhere.
Are there lots of those available?
There are lots of those available. A lot of times a 135, it's a guy who has an airplane, it's a hobby aircraft maybe, and so he's got a website and he takes people out over the Grand Canyon when he gets a phone call or whatever, because he's subsidizing his own hours and whatnot.
Right.
And that's common enough that there are guys retiring all the time, or it's suddenly not profitable and they want to get out. Usually they're selling their whole business, which is an aircraft on the 135.
Right.
But we could acquire one. The other way is, they are free. It's a government certificate. It's a government approval.
Right.
You go through the FAA process. Takes about 6 months.
Right.
So for us, it's about cost of acquiring one, which is also instant, or paying the lawyer for 6 months. Our cost is probably commensurate.
Right.
But in the end, we think we're 6 months out. We think March 1st is probably the first realistic deadline where we'd put a plane in the sky.
That's fantastic. Well, lots of luck.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.